Excellent.
Right.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a special meeting.
I apologize. Let me just start for a moment because I want to read something for folks. Okay, so just give me a moment. So again, my name is Kevin Harrington. Myself and the other judges will follow through on the assignments you give us as part of the simulation. Okay, so first of all, I just want to read an introduction. In this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to us, the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are, or we, the judges, before you begin. You'll have 25 minutes. There'll be a 5-minute buffer to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you're finished, the judges will ask you questions for about 20 minutes. During the Q&A, both the team and judges will stay in character. So we will remain in the identity or roles you assign us as we begin. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside the role playing. Some important things to keep in mind. The ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, these should be described in a simple, practical, common sense fashion. Using technical philosophical terminology or basing your argument on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. During this presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role. Okay? Any questions on what I had a chance to read through? Okay, very good. Thanks for your patience. Please go ahead.
Sorry, sorry, this is Maria Sonam, a judge. Since we are missing one of the official judges, did you want me to step out of my apprentice role and actually do some judging? Because I'm happy to.
Maria, let's do that. I appreciate your flexibility, and that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and proceed that way. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Certainly. Okay.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to a special meeting of the Human Resources Committee of the Board of Directors of Wells Fargo and Company. We are the 3 independent directors who serve on the Human Resources Committee of the Board of Directors of Wells Fargo and Company. We all specialize in analyzing different aspects of the problem. Viola, next slide, please. As can be seen here, Viola specializes in analyzing the ethical effects of reputation loss and trust erosion. I, Ilika, specialize in analyzing the financial aspects of the efforts or the problems that we face. And Anastasia specializes in analyzing the legal mechanisms around the issues that we discuss. Today, we are here to present to the board of the directors about crisis of confidence that we are facing at Wells Fargo. We are losing our industry reputation as a top-notch leader, and our customers are not willing to trust us with their money. We believe that this is a direct consequence of our coercive actions with customers and employees in 2016, which resulted in numerous fines and consent orders that are still outstanding against us. We will be situating these coercive activities in an ethical context to make abundantly clear how these activities went against our customer-centric guiding principles. Then we will follow up with some legal mechanisms that were misused by Wells Fargo during the 2016 period and used to indulge in further coercive actions. We will then talk about some financial consequences that we are facing to this date as a result of the scandal in 2016. And then we will round out our analysis of the issue with a set of proposed solutions and then open the floor for further questions and discussions. We would like to begin by analyzing our main ethical issue, and over to Viola.
So before beginning the whole ethical story, I want to talk about the most central issue here. So the coercion is the most central issue. And what is coercion? It is sometimes treated as a quite general concept encompassing almost any sort of interpersonal hurt on one's rights. On one face, it picks out a technique agents, or we can say coercers, can use to get other agents to do or not to do something. On the other face, it picks out a kind of reason for why agents, or we can say coercees, sometimes to do or refrain from doing something. In Wells Fargo's case, coercion can be seen in two parts. Coercers can be upper management, and the employees would be the coercees. And in the second part, coercers are frontline employees and middle management, and coercees are customers. I'm going to summarize the coercion from management to employees as well as coercion from employees to customers. Prior to 2016, Wells Fargo upper management could not accept that a customer would go anywhere else but Wells Fargo. Thus, the management came up with an idea on building a sale by rolling all the products into one. Essentially, it means a bundling of accounts, including checking, saving, credit, and debit into one, also known as the pack. In the branches, employees has quota for how many packs they're expected to open in a day, and those who miss their target face consequences from upper management. Because of this intense pressure and punishment imposed on employees, it became like next to impossible for employees to do honest work. In an attempt to meet sales quotas, not only employees created fake accounts without customers' consent, but they also coerced new customers into opening additional accounts by convincing them that all kinds of products could only be opened together as a pack. In 2016, as a result of these coercive practices from upper management towards employees and from employees towards customers, Wells Fargo received consent orders from different regulatory agencies and increased customer remediation cases in courts. After hearing the summary, we're going to detail coercion from now on. Former Wells Fargo CEO John Stoff expected employees to sell 8 products per customer. While most US banks have an average of 3 to 4 products or services per customer, at Wells Fargo, the average customer has more than 6. And this goal wasn't realistic, and the goal was apparently chosen in part because 8 rhymed with great. During a sales push called Jump into January, the former employee says the pressure on her and her coworkers to sell was disturbingly intense, and they say, we were all miserable and it was just so crushing to walk in every day. Middle managers and salesmen alike who worked in the community banking were under daily pressure to meet the sales targets. Becky Grimes, a branch manager at Wells Fargo in Austin, Texas, said that each of her frontline employees sold 8 products per customer. If not, Becky Grimes, would receive some kind of warning. And when she was transferred into a suburban branch, the task became more and more difficult, and she ended up quitting her job and going home. In such a situation, branch managers continue the sales culture to their lower level employees. They often persuade employees to meet standards like what middle management had done to them. If an employee failed to meet the target, he or she is going to ask by the manager and ask to work unpaid overtime to meet the target, or even threaten with firing. Comparing to that, employees who successfully sell enough solutions to existing customers will be rewarded financially. But one of the most serious and or coercive tool to push employees was the coaching session. This conversation is from one of the exit interviews we analyzed. This employee, number 1, remembers 2 managers were approached to her desk, reprimand her, and call her go to a one-on-one coaching session where they just sit down at the large conference table, no windows in this room. They shut the door, lock the door, and then the managers would give her a formal warning and tell her to sign it. They would tell her, if you don't meet your solution, you are not a team player. If you're bringing down the team, then you'll be fired and it will be on your permanent record. Another former employee says no manager directly told him to do anything coercive or deceptive with customers, but they will ask him where you're at, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna get there, and then repeat how you're gonna get there. Such coercive environment constantly brought employees tears and pressure. It's exactly coercion from management toward employees. And this job condition can even be compared with an abusive relationship. Because of the coercive environment, if employees plays by the rule, life will be so stressful. If they bend the rules, they might survive for a time. So a bad idea just took root. Employees thought, what if new accounts were opened in the customer's name without customer's consent? In many cases, individuals are motivated by social comparison, such as learning about their peers' behavior. So watching others on our team cheat makes us more likely to do the same. That's how employees in the branch begin their coercion and gaming activities on customers. And employees in Wells Fargo called all the illegal activities as gaming so that they can pretend they're playing a game, but not doing something immoral or illegal to the customers. There are several activities under gaming, such as bundling, sandbagging, and pinning, but the most central coercive problem here is their bundling activities towards customers. Bundling is technically illegal and unethical. In many branches, managers usually require employees to ensure that at least 3 transactions are open within each checking account. As a result, when a customer asks to open an account, the employees at the front desk often coerces the customer that they must open an additional account or purchase other products, which customer usually don't need. Such coercive scandal brought Wells Fargo into a deep and enduring reputation crisis. So our team then reviewed the legal perspective of coercive practices within Wells Fargo.
So what kind of legal mechanisms allowed Wells Fargo to coerce employees and customers? There are both Wells Fargo internal policies and federal laws that allow Wells Fargo employees and customers to push back against coercive behavior. Wells Fargo, however, designed its policies and used federal laws put in place to create protection for employees and customers in the first place to their own advantage, so they can cover up their behavior. Under Wells Fargo internal non-retaliation policy, employees are encouraged to speak up when they observe suspected inappropriate, illegal, and unethical activities and policy violations. Employees of Wells Fargo are protected not only by this internal non-retaliation policy, but also by a corporate whistleblower provision of Sarbanes-Oxley Act that was passed by Congress in 2002. This provision essentially combats corporate silence and protects internal disclosures, such as an employee raising a concern to a supervisor about fraud, that being bank fraud, wiring fraud, etc. In addition to non-retaliation policy and whistleblower provision, the Consumer Financial Protection Act protects disclosures to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau concerning any act that the employer reasonably believes to be a violation of Consumer Financial Protection Bureau regulation. In spite of all of these protective measures and laws, Wells Fargo fired whistleblowers after they tried to alert supervisors about illegal behavior or reported violations to the bank's ethics hotline, a channel that was specifically created for reporting unethical and illegal behavior. Concerns raised by other employees were reportedly ignored, and this includes a petition that was signed by 5,000 colleagues that sought to lower sales quotas and combat unethical conduct. In this case, the damage went beyond the employees who were terminated. In fact, it sent a signal to everyone else that they should keep it quiet, because at best, problem raisers will be ignored, and at worst, they will lose their jobs. By retaliating against whistleblowers, Wells Fargo not only violated its internal practices, but even more so, violated federal laws. And this is one of the most dangerous dynamics to afflict a financial institution. Following the 2008 crisis, regulators have prioritized a healthy banking culture anchored in so-called effective challenge, meaning when people question ideas or escalate problems, they are heard and welcomed without a fear of reprisal. In a large organization such as Wells Fargo, successful risk management requires all hands on deck. Employees should feel not only comfortable, but also accountable for speaking up. In case of Wells Fargo, it created the opposite environment. where employees were discouraged from caring about or challenging anything. Furthermore, customer coercion became possible due to the arbitration clause that allowed Wells Fargo employees to conduct illegal activities of creating fake accounts and persuading customers to purchase solutions they did not need. While binding arbitration is an industry practice that serves a legitimate purpose of reducing the cost of litigation between the bank and the consumer, it was designed to allow illegal activities like opening accounts without customer consent. Arbitration cases aren't public, so they yield almost no information about the nature of the customer's complaint or its magnitude. Therefore, by settling outside the court and avoiding public record, these illegal activities persisted of public view for years. By just taking a quick look at standard Wells Fargo arbitration clause that is, by the way, typically buried within account agreements where customers just ice skate over them or they simply don't even understand them, we see that it was intentionally designed to cover almost any disputes within the bank, even those, I quote, that involve broken promises or other wrongful actions. As a result, Wells Fargo customers who were coerced into buying products they did not need or whose information was wrongfully used to open fake accounts could not participate in a class action lawsuit because under arbitration clause, they surrendered that right. Essentially, such a clause allowed to protect Wells Fargo from being held accountable for any unethical, fraudulent, or even criminal wrongdoing committed, which seems to go way beyond what a reasonably prudent customer would anticipate. We believe that uses of arbitration on those who did not willingly submit to them, but coerced by an adhesion clause are highly problematic ethically. The question becomes, should Wells Fargo pursue arbitration clauses when customers may not be aware or understand that an arbitration clause? Shall a bank even include such a clause in the contract, knowing it will not be read, understood, or appreciated by a likely signatory? And now I would like to pass it over to Ulrika to analyze financial consequences.
Thank you, Viola. I'd like to begin by highlighting two of our heaviest financial consequences, which have hurt our reputation greatly in the industry. Next slide, Viola. I would like to begin by talking about the asset cap imposed on us in February 2018 by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve Bank believes that Wells Fargo does not have satisfactory risk management and governance structures in place as an institution that is deemed too big to fail following the 2008 crisis. Thus, they forbade us as an organization from growing our asset base beyond the amount written in our balance sheet for 2017, a total of 1.95 trillion. This is obviously a huge loss in market value for us, as can be seen by the Bloomberg graph, which shows that we have lost nearly double the market value as our competitors have lost since early 2018 when this cap was imposed. But it is also worth realizing that this penalty constitutes a very heavy blow to our image and our reputation within the industry as a Big Four bank. The next consequence that I would like to cover is fairly recent, but I still think that it is worth noticing some things about it. The net income of Wells Fargo decreased from $19 million in 2019 to a loss of $3 million in 2020, resulting in a year-to-year loss of $22 million. With all the ups and downs of 2020, this number might seem viable, but there are two aspects that do not make it so. The first being that Wells Fargo was the only major lender to lose money in 2020. And second, that we explicitly came out and stated that a large part of this loss was actually due to increased customer remediation following the 2016 fraud scandal. Now we need to move on and highlight something that shows a different aspect of the crisis of confidence that we are facing. As can be seen in the slide, Wells Fargo's deposit base in 2020 was up by only 6.2%, whereas deposits for the other 5 large US banks increased by 28% year on year, which is a number many times of what Wells Fargo saw. Now, from a financial aspect, this is of course a huge problem because we are a retail-oriented business model. Our customer lending business is our most important business. So the fact that we are having difficulties attracting new money is a competitive disadvantage for us. But I'd also like to situate this in a slightly different context. The text box shows a paragraph taken from Wells Fargo's Code of Ethics, in which we say our customers are always our priority. However, seeing the deposit statistic, we believe that this gives an image that our customers no longer trust us to take care of their money and no longer think that we can bring them financial wellness, which I think is an important crisis that we face. We would like to transition now to talking about a proposed set of solutions to the analysis that we have presented beforehand. And the solutions revolve around building a robust culture of compliance at Wells Fargo. Now, many of us sitting on the board right now have been witnesses to the eye of the storm that was 2016. But what we have forgotten is that large part of dealing with a scandal is ensuring that it does not happen again. We have forgotten that unless we implement a strong and sustainable culture of compliance, we will continue facing a crisis of confidence from our stakeholders. We would like to specify here that by compliance, we do not mean a legal compliance to federal and regulatory policies. We mean a firm-wide compliance to legal, financial, and ethical principles, and most importantly, to the guiding principles of Wells Fargo. We caused 4 H's in 2016. We caused hurt, hate, hesitation to trust, and holding on to a grudge. And to offset these, we need to implement the 4 R's, which are remorse, restitution, rehabilitation, and requesting forgiveness. We need to do these by rehabilitating our sales practices, establishing our commitment as upper management to a culture of compliance, researching sustainable key performance indicators, and ensuring that we differentiate between our strategy to achieve compliance and what we measure compliance by. In response to the Fed's asset cap, I call upon the Risk Committee, which is another independent committee that sits under the Board of Directors, just like the Human Resources Committee, to assist in setting up risk registers for the 5 main business units. Risk registers are a risk management tool that act as a repository for all risks identified and include additional information about each risk faced by an organization. But making these is not just about setting up an Excel spreadsheet on a computer and then forgetting all about it. It is about dynamically monitoring the development of these risks by our middle management and ensuring the implementation of protocols to handle them. It's about incorporating feedback when actually formulating these risks from our frontline employees, our salesmen. Overall, it is about implementing what is one of the most sustainable and important elements of a culture of compliance. It is about ensuring that managers and employees are trained on the common risks to the organization and know how to keep the organization safe. In order to build a culture of compliance, we need to steer employees in to do the right thing by ensuring that company values are embedded in everyday work practices. Therefore, we suggest that Wells Fargo conduct a full-scale annual audit of its ethics line to investigate, number 1, how many calls with regards to unethical, illegal, or coercive behavior came in. Number 2, if these investigations were documented formally. And number 3, quite simply, seeing what actions are actually taken to resolve these issues. Like I've said before, we must regularly revisit, revitalize, and reinforce our commitment to a robust culture of compliance. It is not sufficient for Wells Fargo to simply have policies in place. Instead, there must be a program that trains employees to be aware of relevant ethics and compliance issues. Thus, Wells Fargo shall implement a dedicated communication and training program for employees regarding the Speak Up/ethics helpline that we have in firm. This will, under the new training program, Wells Fargo shall start with conducting employee interviews to assess awareness of relevant policies, how well they understand their responsibilities in connection with ethics and business conduct policies, and naming each policy individually. This will help us assess if all employees are provided with the information regarding the code of conduct that we follow at Wells Fargo, and if so, whether they understand its requirements.
In response to the reduction of our customer deposits, our solution tries to address something we mentioned in the problem before, that we're not living up to the phrase from our code of ethics. Customers are our business. We need to rethink the role of the upper management in promulgating the guiding principles of Wells Fargo. We colloquially here the clarity principle of communication. The clarity principle states that clarity is derived from purpose, and purpose from a pivotal act of choice that leaders make about the business. And we ask the upper management to make a commitment to this culture of compliance, to make a bold choice, and finally stand up for transparency, accountability, and ethical business. The commitment to this clarity principle in a way to address harmful impact on Wells Fargo's reputation, we need to go beyond just internal changes and make trade-offs that positively impact the financial wellness of our customers. We must reinforce our values, renew our customer trust, and impact changes in the financial industry by empowering our customers. With that being said, Wells Fargo shall extend customer education initiatives to being transparent about arbitration. Wells Fargo must educate its customers so they are aware if their credit card agreements include arbitration clauses and how they work to protect their rights. Wells Fargo shall also not stop consumers from being a part of the group action. Not only this can keep Wells Fargo more accountable, but also can broadly influence business practices of the entire financial industry. We strongly believe that a customer-centered approach like that would be beneficial for Wells Fargo in an attempt to renew clients' trust. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attention. We now would like to open the floor for discussion.
Excellent presentation. Thanks very much. I do have a couple of questions, just in terms of the outcomes and the results of what's happened. In particular, has the group identified or considered, is there a core or deeper issue with respect to what transpired here? The events that Viola defined as coercion as really being the core problem that arose in the way Wells Fargo associates behaved and approached their roles. Is there a deeper issue at Wells Fargo in terms of either culture or values or priorities that needs to be addressed? And I don't have that question for anyone specifically. I'm just curious if the group had considered this problem. This problem is a symptom, effectively, that was realized by virtue of the way employees behaved and conducted themselves. But there was an environment that reflects a deeper problem that effectively enabled this phenomena, this scenario to occur at Wells Fargo. Is that something you've considered or have any related thoughts or recommendations?
Going back a little bit and talking about actually how the practice of sales or the idea of measuring the product sold to customer as a metric. This was actually developed by Wells Fargo as a way to measure how many customers had long-term banking relationships with Wells Fargo. So the idea of selling as many products as we could to a customer was supposed to serve as a signal for how much our customers trusted us. But we got lost in the way and we got caught up in the trap of what is called surrogation, in that we confused what our strategy was with what we measured it by. So while the coercive activities and the oppressive sales pressure was actually, we believe, a symptom of the idea that sales became everything as compared to what our actual strategy was, which was ensuring that our customers were, staying with us long term and happy with us.
Alika, thank you. That makes sense. I appreciate you sharing that observation. Have there been other, or perhaps past, issues that arose out of this culture of stressing first and foremost, sales performance and results that led us astray in this circumstance or that led to these issues occurring? Are there other issues or reflections of this type of problem that you discovered in learning about Wells Fargo? Or perhaps at some of Wells Fargo's competitors? Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
This is just a small observation, but we did there was a class action lawsuit against us in 2017 that detailed some coercive activities in opening accounts for illegal immigrants, which is a very common thread in some of our competitors. Some of our competitors have also faced lawsuits in terms of actually either forcing illegal immigrants to open accounts for us without complete knowledge on their behalf, or either discriminating against them on behalf of their legal status, such as DACA or such.
Alika, thank you. Okay. Specific to recommendations that were discussed towards in the remediation sort of section of your discussion, you mentioned doing reviews or reviewing business practices and or how employees are executing those practices or performing versus what their objectives are. That review, would that be something that should be done internally, or should there be a third-party independent auditor or similar type organization that performs those reviews?
We believe that in terms of culture problems, I think that we should first, if we begin by owning up to the idea that we need to implement a strong culture of compliance, then beginning with a third-party auditor and then reviewing those recommendations internally would be something that we recommend. But that is contingent on the idea that we, sitting here as the upper management, actually commit to creating a culture of compliance and to actually following through with the recommendations of the independent third-party auditor.
Okay, so a third-party auditor, an external resource or consultant body should be the ones to perform the reviews, similar to how you've done in your assessment and presenting to us today. Do I follow? Very good. Okay. What have been further repercussions or consequences of this this behavior and these practices having become public? You explained and helped us, reminded us of financial results and how we were regarded in terms of our stock value. Have there been other repercussions in terms of either folks being fired or let go? Have there been folks assigned blame? What else have been sort of the consequences of these events at Wells Fargo?
So from they fired actually 5,300 employees after the scandal.
Wow. Okay.
And they said they're bad apples. Upper management said the fired employees are bad apples, but not the whole culture is like this. Yes, they said that.
Okay. Did the chief executive or chief compliance officers, other senior members of Wells Fargo's leadership, were they replaced as a consequence of these events?
That is
they
correct.
Were. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Do the other judges have any questions for the team?
If no one has asked, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, you're good.
You mentioned a bunch of laws, Sarbanes and CFTC or CFPB, whatever it was, and all these other things. These laws have been in existence for many years. Where were they and where was compliance beforehand? And why do we think all of a sudden that because of this scandal, things are going to change? And then secondly, the numbers you quoted, were those accurate? Because I find it hard to believe that Wells Fargo only made millions of dollars in a year.
Which numbers are you referring to?
There was on one of the charts you showed, you said Wells Fargo made $2 million.
That was in terms of the net income for Wells Fargo, and it was minus $3 million, like a loss of $3 million for 2020, down from $19 million in 2019, which was a year-to-year loss of $22 million.
I don't think that's right. you might want to check to see if it's billion instead of million. But better point. On the compliance stuff, where was compliance beforehand? I understand that things need to change, but Sarbanes is not a new law. Whistleblower protections are not new. These are things that should have been, especially a whistleblower line is required to be tested as part of management's internal controls. So where was the failure in the past from those areas? I mean, I understand it's important to have these things working and working properly, but what was the failure because someone had to evaluate and test the design and effectiveness of all those processes and controls?
That is correct. What we're highlighting here is that the federal laws that were in place, that Wells Fargo violated not only internal policy, but also federal laws that were around for a very long time.
Right, but what failed? These are what I'm saying is what you're suggesting is appropriate, that these things need to be addressed, but what allowed these, you know, there was a whistleblower hotline. Was it not effective before? Someone had to evaluate the outputs of the whistleblower hotline before. You know, was it not being done? Was it not done right? Did people not know about it? I mean, why are the things that you're saying need to be done now not being done before? Because it isn't like these are things that are nice to have. Some of these are required under law.
Absolutely. We think it's a failure of checks and balances. We had it for quite a while. And the internal problem is that what we're trying to figure out as part of the solution of our annual audit is where the disconnect is. It's the disconnect where our employees do not know that we actually have internal policies in place that will protect them and that will allow them to speak up when they observe illegal behavior, or they are afraid of the consequences. So we're trying, with the annual audit, we're trying to figure out whether they do not know, or if those internal controls are not working, where those internal controls are actually failing, at which stage, which leads to illegal behavior.
But shouldn't that have been done before, is what my question is.
Yeah,
what
so
didn't happen before
sorry.
to allow it to happen? Because you're saying you're going to do it in the future, but these things existed before and someone deemed they were designed and effective before, but obviously they weren't. That's the point I'm trying to get at. What is the thing that needs to be done and fixed? Because there seems to be a systemic breakdown throughout the whole chain.
Yes, so I'm going to add on this. Before this part, actually, like, the employees are doing illegal thing and the upper management trying to condoning, or they are covering up the problems. They are supposed to figure out those, like, the fake accounts problems, but they are just trying to pretend not to see it. So right now we're trying to do the annual review, as Anastasia just mentioned. Like before, they are trying to covering up the problem. They are trying to pretend nothing has happened. Nothing is happening.
I would also like to contextualize that a little bit for 2016, in that when whistleblowers of Wells Fargo, like internal employees, called into the ethics line in 2016 and reported that unauthorized accounts were being made, we do not know if the upper management just simply never got to know about them, if middle management did not report them in the formal procedure, or if they knew about them and chose not to follow up on them because they saw that the sales figures were going up. So we are simply not aware of how, while we had all these federal regulations and laws in place, we are not aware of whether the breakdown, as you said, was at the part of reporting and communication, or if it was at its essence a very unethical breakdown of we're going to value our sales figures over the intense pressure that our employees are telling us about.
First of all, thank you all for a very well-reasoned, very thorough discussion of this. This is obviously a huge issue to our organization, and we need to make sure we get this right. Obviously the confidence of our consumers in our organization and sort of the overall health of our entity is at an ebb right now. And and this is where we really need to make sure that we can get ourselves on the right path to sustain long-term success. What I'd like to explore further with you all, so that I have a better understanding of it, is the financial implications of your solution. A lot of the things that you proposed are things that, to me, ethically make sense and seem like they could put us on the right path. But I'm wondering if we can get more discussion on whether we can afford these things. Chief among which is the solution. I mean, there's two dimensions I want to explore. First is the solution that was proposed on the legal side, in which you recommended that we provide additional transparency on the arbitration clauses that exist in our agreements, as well as allowing for class action suits, which we have yet to be, which we don't currently do at present. And ethically and spiritually, I can see how that could provide value. But I also understand that these sorts of clauses aren't just nefarious. They are important tools that not only limit our organization's liability, but allow for a more efficient resolution of disputes. And how can you provide assurances that by adopting the reforms you've recommended, which including allowing our very sizable customer base to bring class action litigation against us, how can we be assured that that's not going to bankrupt the organization? Are there perhaps other banks that have similar clauses that have been able to thrive under those conditions? Have you looked at what the potential liability and financial implications could be of those particular reforms?
So we understand that litigation clauses, they actually serve a legitimate concern. Yes, sure, they reduce the cost of litigation, but as the research shows, and evidence shows, it's actually beneficial for a business and not that much for the consumer. So as far as bank, we really don't lose that much money as a consumer. And just to give you some numbers, and non-for-profit level playing field, and not-for-profit that actually as a database for arbitration awards, out of 215 cases that were filed against Wells Fargo between 2009 and 2016, we have 48 arbitration cases where Wells Fargo won in 13, customers won in 7, and Wells Fargo was collected a total of $485,000 compared to $349,000 compared to consumer. So yes, they serve a legitimate purpose, and we understand, but we have to make a trade-off. So if our commitment is to make our customers trust again, and if we are focusing on the retail banking, and if we are to increase the deposits that actually lately decreased for us significantly, we have to make a trade-off, and we have to commit to creating a culture where our customer will trust us again.
Understood. I'd like to now look at another financial aspect of your solution. I really enjoyed how you all presented the 4 R's. I don't know if that was something that came from the ethics literature or if that's something that you all coined, but it really helped me wrap my head around the solution and helped us understand as decision makers what the challenge was in front of us. And so that was appreciated. And one of the R's that you had introduced was restitution. And I think of restitution certainly in the financial context. And so I'd like to have you guys discuss that point a little more on the financial side. What do we mean exactly by restitution? And if it's going to be financially compensating our customers for the damage they've caused them, are we talking about a dollar for dollar repayment to those aggrieved customers? And if so, again, how much is that going to cost? And is that something that our company is in a position to afford?
I'd like to. So I think the way that we approach restitution was not like give money to consumers kind of way, because we are already facing customer remediation and consent orders, and we do not suggest or recommend in any way that more customer compensation should be furthered. I think by restitution, what we meant was the idea of trust, and kind of following up on your last question about like the financial aspects of marketing and hoping that this kind of links to it. For example, Wells Fargo is running a very massive rebranding marketing campaign since 2016, in which we're kind of harkening back to our Stagecoach days and kind of running this campaign on massive scales and print, media, TV, radio, everywhere. So I think that we think that in terms of restitution, using initiatives, using the financial costs that we are already using for that kind of marketing campaign, and maybe setting some aside or kind of rebudgeting them to allow for education initiatives would be a form of restitution, because we believe that educating customers about their rights and responsibilities is a great way to make up for how we exploited them in 2016.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I'd like to add my thanks too to your presentation. It was very thorough. Thank you. And the one point that I'm would like to really focus on is the employees, because our employees are the ones who will have the interaction with the public. And it seems to me from the practices that were in 2016 in this coercive environment that you really clearly explained, what are we doing to make sure that, what are we doing on the ground with the code of conduct? I looked at the code of conduct that is available now compared to the one 2016. I couldn't seem to find any substantial differences in how that was written, but for the fact that the picture of the former chairman wasn't on the front page anymore. But is the text no longer, is the text still the same? And how do we give employees confidence that they can, if they have an issue, who do they physically go to? Because sometimes if it's not one person in control, no one's in control. Who's the person that they can go to with confidence and know if they have an issue, they could talk to them? I mean, have you thought about increasing compliance officers throughout the company? I mean, what's your, have you thought about what's going to be on the ground that we can support these employees who are going to be doing the direct interface with the customers, so they have confidence in the culture of the company that we're trying to change? And that's open to you. I'd like to answer, please.
Yeah, a lot has changed in terms of sales practices with employees since 2016. For example, now we no longer pursue very direct product sales goals. We have also kind of revised our sales incentive bonus scheme so that that pressure, that stress is kind of gone from that. But that being said, like we mentioned in the in one of our slides, that we have not really come to terms with making sure that the scandal doesn't happen again. We have ensured that the aftermath goes over, and we have ensured that all our employees understand that we are there for them, but we have not put systems and controls in place that could actually help our employees. So we still have the ethics line. It is more centralized now, as I believe. And we have also considered and discussed having investigations into the control mechanisms at every individual branch. So like you said, actually investigating what is the flow of information like in a branch. If a frontline salesman says, I cannot do this, how does that information flow up? But there have not been any concrete actions taken regarding that, which is what we recommend in our presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question. I want to pick up on something that you just said around sales goals and incentives. Could you speak a little bit more to that and the role that that may have played in the actions in 2016, and what concrete changes have been made?
Yes, sure. So before the 2016, the incentive mechanism is going to be if employees cannot reach the goal of selling 8 products per customer, and even in a day, they will be like get into the coaching session, as I mentioned, and they are going to face the firing consequences, maybe, and yes. Not maybe, yes. And then if an employee can do such thing, can meet the quota, and they will be rewarded financially, like 15% to 20% on their salary. And also, if the opening accounts number is also their promotions method. is how they measure if an employee can be promoted or not, or they're just going to be fired or not. Yes, and then after 2016, they canceled this sales quota, so like not everyone is going to sell a unrealistic goal anymore, not to sell 8 per day or 8 per customer anymore. Yes.
I think the most concrete example of our sales changes have been that we have removed the practice, at least officially, of cross-selling from our organization, which is that we no longer pressfully or put pressure on employees to actually sell multiple products to a single customer.
Okay. Okay, we're going to step out of the simulation. I want to have a chance to discuss how what we learned in the team's performance. I want to mention a couple of things right up front. So first of all, as the team may have learned in sort of hindsight, one of the most important decisions you make as a team when you consider participating in the competition is the topic you choose. You chose an excellent topic. I do not take for granted that you probably researched this quite a bit and may have even felt a bit conflicted or came together as a team, but well done in terms of the topic you chose. It served all 3 of the dimensions: ethical, legal, and financial. And I really think you did a very good job of presenting those dimensions and in particular how you organized. I share one of the other judges' observations, it might have been Ryan, about the 4 R's. That was a really good point to make in terms of how we can change culture or reinforce expectations with employees. That's a big deal. And those sort of principles are essential for companies, particularly financial companies, to operate effectively, consistently, reliably, and predictably. So well done to the team, first and foremost, for your choice of topic. I thought you did a very good job in terms of balancing and discussing all 3 of the aspects as a group. And in particular, I like the introduction as well, where you set the stage for what you were going to be going through. I also value and think you did an excellent job of identifying the critical legal implications and consequences. Sarbanes-Oxley, of course, being instituted after the 2008-2009 financial crisis, being a significant factor that influences how financial organizations operate. So well done, choice of topic, excellent job in terms of developing each of the 3 areas. One of the most challenging parts of this is answering questions, because inevitably Ryan, Maria, Kathleen, and I, we've all worked in corporate America or similar environments for years. You've not had the privilege of doing that yet, but we inevitably encounter ethical and financial challenges in the nature of our careers. And it's likely that you may encounter them as well. So certainly keep in mind the things and the lessons you learned and what you learned from other teams and groups that you meet through the competition. So I cannot stress, well done, really all around, good introduction, excellent balance across the topics. And I also thought you did a real good job in Q&A. It is not easy answering questions with folks who've been, and perhaps some of our examples, living these things or very familiar with the topics by virtue of our own personal experience. So thanks very much for all the work and effort you put in coming to participate in the committee. I thought you all did a real strong job. Ryan, Maria, Kathleen, Michael, any other questions, comments, or feedbacks for the group?
I'll just echo everything you said. I thought you did a very wonderful job. You had a good grasp of the material and the issues. I thought you used the PowerPoint well. You didn't read from it. You used it as illustrative, which I think is the best way to use a PowerPoint. You don't want someone reading from it. And I thought you did a really good job having key points there, and you used that very well. So well done. And I know things like this are much harder to do when you're on Zoom, even though we might all be a little bit more used to Zoom now, but kudos to you for doing very well. Very good job. Thank you.
I echo what Kathleen said. I hate PowerPoint, so the less information on a slide, the better. I enjoyed listening to it without having to focus on what was. In fact, I was listening more than I was looking at the slides, which is an indication that I didn't need to look at the slides. Slides should be the side dish, so to speak, not the main course. And I think you guys did a real good job in telling us what we needed to know without constantly referring to a bullet point on a slide or a chevron on a graphic, which is very hard for even professionals in our world to do on a daily basis. So whoever came up with that idea or helped you develop this presentation style, it's very, very good.
Yeah, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
I would just echo the insights from my colleagues there, especially with what Kevin said about your choice of topic. Not only is Wells Fargo a great choice of topic in terms of just being filled with some pretty interesting ethical issues, it's also a courageous choice of topic. I have coached IBEC teams in the past, and I would never let a group of students take on Wells Fargo because it is a tough case. It is an example of just such a catastrophic ethical, legal, and financial failure by an organization at so many different levels that it's just really hard to look at it and be like, I think I can fix this one. I don't think anybody can fix this one. At least it can't be fixed easily. So a team that's willing to take it on and provide the thoughtful level of analysis that you guys did really speaks to the just incredible work you all did in this presentation. I really did enjoy the analysis. I thought your PowerPoint was excellent. It wasn't too wordy. It hit the points it needed to hit. So it made for a presentation that flowed very well. The things that I would, the nits that I would pick in terms of the presentation is, one, make sure your opening lets us know right away what the issue is. You guys did get into the issue by your second speaker a little bit, but we should know within the first 30 seconds what we're like. We knew, since it was Wells Fargo, we all kind of knew, okay, we know where this is going, but it would be useful for us and instructive for us to kind of lay out for us very, quickly exactly what we're identifying as the problem. And I think a great way to do that, which I think works really well with teams, is when they open with a story. Especially with Wells Fargo, this could work really well. Tell us about one customer that just got caught in this terrible web and how it had a legitimate real world impact on their daily life so that we're sucked in and we want to know how to fix the problem. In terms of the solution, there's one thing I really want you guys to identify and be mindful of as you do future presentations like this. So IBEC has two components in terms of legal, financial, ethical. One is to describe the problem from the legal, financial, and ethical dimension. And the other one is to propose a solution that specifically is justifiable on the legal, financial, and ethical dimension. So you need to burn some calories to demonstrate to the judges that what you're proposing to fix this problem is going to be, is not going to get the company sued, is not going to bankrupt the company, and is going to be ethically justifiable. And you really want to make sure that your presentation can do that. The first half of it, you guys nailed. Very thoughtful analysis on all three dimensions. I would have liked to see more of that thoughtful analysis on the solution side, especially, and that's why sort of a lot of the questions I was posing on the financial side was me wanting you to probe that a little bit more. Like, you had great solutions there. I wanted to be able to be assured that Wells Fargo was in a position to pay for your reforms. I think a great way that you can do that going forward is to highlight what you already did really well, which were those 4 R's. I love the 4 R's. That sucked me in right away. I think what would have been cool is to have you go through each of those 4 R's as part of your solution one by one and provide specific reforms within each of your R's that would specifically hit on the legal, financial, ethical. That would have been, and I'm not saying you didn't discuss those things, but just to really put it in front of us so we know as a board exactly what we need to do and exactly what the trade-offs, as you guys aptly put it in your presentation, are going to be. All of that being said, like, as I said before, I'm picking nits here. This was a strong presentation, thoughtful analysis, and I admire the fact that you had the courage to take on an incredibly challenging case. So kudos to all of you.
Yeah, I would echo what everyone has said. I really, especially around the difficulty in the topic. It's a tough topic. There's a lot of information out there that you know, has looked at it from all different angles. So it would be easy to get kind of caught up in the overabundance of information to try to really kind of nail down a specific problem and solution. I want to also say that I think that you all did a really good job of balancing each presenter with both in your presentation as well as in the Q&A. That's really, that was great. I think you all, each of you did a fabulous job separately and as well as together. I would also kind of echo some of what Ryan said around, you know, making sure you're addressing each area of the solution. I think it's often easier maybe to address some of the ethical parts of it, but when you actually have an opportunity in your future lives to get in front of leadership and board of directors, I think you will quickly find that that financial and legal part tends to be a bit more higher on their radar, for good or for bad. But you know, that's really kind of some world experience advice that I would like to share with you. I think it was also important on the ethical. I think it was also interesting on the ethical piece of it, where you really kind of focused on the coercion. I thought that was a good choice. I think a lot of people with Wells Fargo, they just kind of say, well, you know, they treated their customers unethically, and that is a bit nebulous and difficult to really pin down. But I think really focusing on that concept of coercion was very, very interesting and actually something that I hadn't really heard before. And I've heard a lot about Wells Fargo. So, you know, kudos on that. I thought that was a really interesting kind of part of the ethical dimension to focus on. So I think you all did a great job and great presentation styles and excellent job. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks to the Mount Holyoke team for a really, really strong presentation and in particular, well done in Q&A. That is often the most challenging part when you're working and talking with folks who've been in corporate America and dealing with these issues perhaps directly or indirectly. So well done. Thanks very much. For the judges, each of you should have a feedback form or have access to one. So I'd ask if you would to complete it. Maria, please complete yours as well and send that in, okay? Any questions from the team for the judges? Okay, really good. Thanks again, exhale, and we'll see y'all later. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Okay, thank you all.
Good luck, everyone.